Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I wanted to share this impromptu little story that I basically just happened to me like today, about a real example of how shadow work works as you're going through your day. So this is going to be like a little example from my own experience. And the reason I'm sharing this one is because it's so easy to see the whole process from start to finish. And it's so easy to see how organically you can get these insights. So, okay. So I'm just going to go through basically how this played out. And again, this is shadow work, and like integration work is super, super individualistic. So anything that you're interacting with in your environment could end up being the clue that leads you to something else, that leads you to something else, that gives you that insight, like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. I didn't know I was suppressing that, or I didn't know I needed that or wanted that thing, like whatever the case. Okay, so I was reading a book about an herbal recipe book about herbal medicine. And one of the recipes had lemon, I think it was called lemon verbena in it. I don't even know what that is, okay? So this is proof that this stuff really, really works. I didn't know what that was, but as I'm reading, I felt super, super overstimulated all of a sudden, like kind of like pacey, like frantic energy. So whenever your energy changes like that out of nowhere at all, you're literally sitting there like reading a book or having a conversation, like a super drastic shift in how you're feeling, that is an indicator that you just got triggered. Okay, so I'm sitting here reading this book, totally calm, and I'm reading this recipe and I get super overstimulated. I start feeling like I have to do something, moving around, like literally my body feels different, like my heart rate goes up, very literal change in how I'm feeling. Now, mind you, I didn't understand that it was that particular phrase or ingredient that I was reacting to. So I just knew that I was reading this recipe. I started feeling really like overactive, stimulated all of a sudden. So I go right into meditation once I realize this is happening. And I talk about this in the shadow workbook. Direct processing basically is what I'm doing here. So I go directly into meditation, and basically what happens in this situation when you're like right in the middle of a trigger, like you're having that reaction, and it could be any reaction. Mine just happened to be feeling really anxious, like overstimulated. Not even anxious, really, just overstimulated was the particular feeling I was having, but it could be any feeling. So important to note that. And I just sort of like sat and watched it. And that one phrase popped into my head, lemon verbena. I started having these little, what people call intuitive hits. So I started having these like memories of being really young, and I can't verify whether this is the exact thing that happened. It could have even just been like a symbolic representation of what happened, but I remember being in my parents' house before it was changed around. They had their old this like, I don't know, bar thing that I was standing at, and I had this like thing pop into my head where I'm leaning over and smelling this lemon verbena candle. Again, I can't tell you for sure whether that happened, whether that was where it happened. I don't remember, obviously. I was very, very small in this memory. But whether it happened literally like that or whether it was a symbolic representation of something that happened doesn't really matter. It's just I got that idea. And so stay with me here. There's a point to all this. So in herbal medicine, citrus, things like lemon and like things like that, are known as stimulating scents. So I'm having this memory, I'm smelling a candle, and this overstimulation feeling that I was feeling in the moment when I was triggered comes back. And so I'm having this memory of it happening before in a very similar way. And again, I was very small in this memory. So continuing to watch it in meditation, I'm having more memories of just being really small and jumping up and down. And I remember, I do consciously remember doing this as a kid, so I can verify this. Jumping up and down on the couch, just over and over, just jumping. And this was probably a really early memory because obviously I wasn't doing that at like 10 years old. I was very little. So and I'm still just like watching this energy. I'm still feeling it in my body, like overstimulated. And so I'm just watching this little version of me just jumping and like flopping around in like cartwheels in this like, just, when you watch, if you've ever watched little kids playing, like sometimes you wonder if they're going to explode from all they're like a ball of energy. So that's what I was seeing in this meditation. And what was so interesting about this, and this is how you know you're suppressing an aspect of yourself and it's in shadow, is that I didn't in any way, and I still don't as an adult, I didn't identify as an overactive, hyperactive kid at all. I did not act that way in school. I was the dead opposite of that type of kid. Now, when I got home from school, I was a little bit more of myself. So that's kind of where the memories are coming from. I was kind of acting that out. When you're doing this process, you can ask questions in your mind, like, how is that version of me feeling? Like, what was I feeling like in that memory? And you'll start to have these answers pop up, like, I can't slow down, like, I can't calm down. I'm so stimulated, like, I just have to keep moving. I'm going crazy. Like, these were the kinds of things that were coming up in this particular meditation. But again, I've had a zillion other things, other experiences. So this is just one way it can play out with the overstimulation. So I'm just watching it and I start to understand a lot of my adult grounding issues suddenly start to make sense. So all of this stuff about how we have to quiet our minds, we have to meditate, we have to be grounded. I have struggled so hard in my adult life with grounding. Like, even meditation, even like 2 minutes of meditation has been such a struggle for me. I still like generally do it and try to do it, but I mean, the progress has been super, super slow with that. And I have always, as an adult, I've always identified as a person with a super, super, super overactive mind. I never really put that together because I never, when I was in school, I was not that classic ADHD kid. So it didn't make, like, I didn't relate to the sorts of problems those types of people have, like I can't focus and I'm like jittery and moving around. I didn't identify with any of that. So I thought that was not who I was. I actually was just completely suppressing that part of me. As small as it is, it's still a part and it's still being suppressed. So now you kind of get the gist of like how this works. Now, what is the practical thing that we're going to pull out of this? Like, how do we move forward with this new piece of information that I'm, like there's a part of me that's hyperactive, very, very like movement oriented, like lots of ideas, that sort of stuff. How do I take that new knowledge that is just a part of who I am, also the knowledge that it's been suppressed, because if it's not suppressed, there's no problem. The problem comes in when it's suppressed, then it starts causing problems. The answer for me in this particular situation was become the hyperactive person. Be the hyperactive person. Because all of this stuff about having a super overactive mind to the point where it was uncomfortable, I would tell people, like, I have problems with, like, I can't stop thinking. I can't sit and just meditate. Like, I go insane. And again, with these shadow aspects, they're always going to seem like your problem. So I thought my problem was I can't stop thinking. I thought my problem was I can't get grounded. I always am up in my head, I'm not in my body, and it's causing me major, major physical issues, which it was. And for years and years and years it was. And what I'm now coming to understand is that all of those problems were because of the suppression of that hyperactive aspect. Basically, that hyperactivity, when it's being suppressed, it gets more frantic and frantic and frantic and more hyperactive and more hyperactive. And it's like screaming for attention, as shadow aspects always do. This was just this one particular aspect. Like, all the aspects will have a different way that they scream for attention. So me being unable to ground myself, unable to stop thinking, stop having ideas, it seemed like a burden because I was trying so hard to tamper it down. This is why advice is so individualistic, and you can't give one piece of advice to all people, because all people have different shadow aspects, and no practitioner, no person, no matter how smart they are, knows what those aspects are for each individual. So for me, ironically, this advice about you have to quiet your mind, you have to focus on getting grounded, you have to push out distractions, you have to just sit and be quiet, that is exactly what I did for 12 years of school. So while for one person that might be the exact advice that changes their life and heals them of all these issues, for me, to get more quiet, to get more still, to silence the mind, that was actually antagonizing this shadow part and causing these eruptions of just constant ideas, like laying in bed at night, oh, another idea, another thought, because that attempt to get grounded, as good as it is to be grounded, ironically, it was an antagonist. So the interesting thing with this one, and this is another reason I wanted to share this, because this is like a real good example. The ironic thing here is that for me personally, to be more grounded, I have to embody how active I actually am. So for me, that means there's going to be a lot of ideas. There's going to be a lot of urge to do things. There's going to be this, perhaps for a while, this hyperactivity, and it may need to be acted out. Like, people may look at you and say, like, why are you being so hyperactive all of a sudden? Like, you can't pay attention to these judgments when people don't know what's going on. Like, a lot of times someone will give you bad advice having no idea that they're doing it. They may say, like, oh, you just need to calm down. Like, actually, actually, I'm in this process of shadow work, and actually what I have to do is somehow learn to embody how active I actually am, instead of constantly stuffing it down and pretending I'm calm. And here's the way that you know that you're suppressing an aspect. Ask the people around you, do you think I'm hyperactive? Or whatever your thing is. Mine, like, again, example, hyperactive. Your thing might be, I don't know. It could be literally any trait about you. Ask them, like, do you think I'm hyperactive? And if all of them say, no, you're very calm, you're suppressing it. Now, there may be things that you really just aren't. Like, maybe you're just not a hyperactive person. That's fine. But if you are and you're suppressing it, there's going to be symptoms that correlate to those suppresses. So when you're suppressing it, it's not going to shut up. That part of you is not going to shut up. It's going to get more frantic and throwing things and like throwing a tantrum, basically. So hopefully that gives you an idea of how this process works. And like I said, in the shadow workbook, I have little exercises you can do, but ultimately you don't even need anyone else's exercise. You can just do this as you're going through your day. And the important thing I want to drive home here is remembering that you're using your life experience. You're using the things that you encounter in your environment, and you're using your triggers specifically to get down to the bottom of this stuff. So you're using your triggers in your waking life. Like in my example, reading the book, reading a sentence about lemon verbena. I still don't even, I think it's an herb, I don't know. It doesn't even matter. These little random things that you would never ever guess, you would never put them together logically. That's how intuition works. You would never put them together logically. That's why you have to do this processing work to even understand what's going on. Doesn't matter how smart you are, how self-aware you are, it doesn't matter. Subconscious is subconscious for everybody. So if you're not developing your intuition, and that's something I'm gonna talk way more about in, more specific detail. But if you're not developing that intuitive muscle to where you're recognizing triggers, you're stopping to sit with them, you're getting curious about them, your intuition is going to tell you everything. You don't need to do any detective work or any figuring out work. That's all mental logic stuff. So all you need to do is recognize the triggers, make the space to sit with it quietly, however you do. Writing, you could do, different processing techniques, but that's all you do. Trigger, notice it, sit down, what's going on here. No investigation work, you just get quiet and wait for your intuition to tell you the answer. And that's where intuition comes in. You might have a thought, you might hear a sentence, you might, like a smell might bring a memory back to you, all that sort of stuff. Another thing is feelings will come up. That's another really good indicator. So yeah, that's this processing work. That's how you do this integration work, and you get this new information. So that is how you do this processing work. I am off to somehow learn how to embody my hyperactivity. If you have any tips for how I can do that, please leave them in the comments below. I'm gonna need some help with that. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.